Hello everyone, my name is Nizhoni Tallas and today I'm going to share with you some of my work. And this particular presentation is called It's a Sign, Understanding Variations and Telling Indigenous Histories Within Public Outdoor Spaces. So to start with, I'll be sharing a slide about myself, introduction, objective, method, 6R framework, observations, further questions, conclusion, and then finishing off with the next steps. Please forgive me. I'm getting over a cold. So don't mind me clearing my throat every so often. Um, I am a daughter, a sister, a friend, student, mentor. I am from Rough Rock, Arizona, located on the Navajo Nation. I study natural resources and land management at the University of Arizona. I'm a current master's student. Will be continuing on with my PhD. I enjoy hiking, skiing, camping. Those are just a couple of photos. One photo being my family, another photo being on the amazing campus of University of Arizona. And then going into the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, and then the National Environmental Policy Act of 1970. So both of these policies influenced my thinking of what I should do about this project, encouraged the way I looked at it, viewed it, especially in the sense because both of these policies make sure that these spaces are protected, especially cultural sites, heritage sites. Also knowing that the Environmental Policy Act of 1970, they also provide environmental impact assessments, which is very important when it comes to the development of these outdoor spaces, such as camps, trail systems, visitors stations, or just the development of a park as a whole. So just want to acknowledge that information and give a little background on that. So going on, my objective of this project is to understand the language patterns utilized in public land signage and educational displays by addressing patterns found throughout the National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, and U.S. Forest Service displays. Currently, NPS is making progress on changing place names to include more appropriate and culturally relevant language. And that's awesome. And I like to see that. And I actually came across some parks that actually did that. So that's really encouraging. And I'm looking forward to seeing more signage through the NPS. And I hope you like that photo of Candiche. That's one of the tribal parks located on the Navajo Nation. I took that over the summer while visiting home. Unfortunately, it was still closed at that time, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's really beautiful. It's right after a rainstorm too. And to apply that research and to better understand what I'm currently looking at is applying the 6R's framework, which includes representation, relevance, responsibility, reciprocity, respect, and relationship. So all of those I could better understand how can the signs show these 6R's. How well are the federal agencies using these 6R's in the creation of their signs, especially when it comes to relationship building? How are they including the community in the signs, their voices, especially their language, the traditional knowledge, because that's all part of the land itself. So my research is really looking at how can these federal agencies and also tribal communities as a whole can they work together to produce like holistic science. So some of the methods that I incorporated within this research to see how well I could see those 6R's in science, or even to see what the current signage looks like within these parks. So then one of the methods is photo to text. So I would take pictures of all these signs from all these different park locations throughout the Southwest, mostly being in Arizona. There's a couple in New Mexico. And then taking that, transcribing that to text with the software, And then here are my other method, which is gathering metadata from these photos. So I had 12 different columns, and all of those columns was able to get a piece of information from that sign, some of which is shown here. And they included getting the location of the sign, what kind of park it was. Unfortunately, the GPS coordinates, we were having some trouble with that, so we don't have that for the photos or the sites, but it would be great to have that in the future. And then also noting, did that sign include native language? Also noting, did the sign go through a similar pathway in terms of the park? And looking at what kind of sign it was, what did it describe? And so those are just some of the columns I had there. And then the other method is looking at data analysis. So after getting that information from the metadata, this research was really highly qualitative. So I'm using coding currently right now to find themes from each R within these different signs from these different locations. So here's just a screenshot of what that looks like. I'm still in the initial phases of it. This is just a draft. I'm working through different versions and looking at how I could best develop this efficiently. And the best is just by finding these themes and indicators to see how well does each of these signs represent the 6 R's. So for instance, this picture here is an example of respect. So looking at, does this sign honor the knowledge presented? Also, does this sign present a balance between native history and non-native history? And looking at just how well do they use native language. So just those are examples that of indicators that I'm using currently just to look at the data I have. So I'm currently going through that right now, and hopefully we'll have results in a couple months. To share some of the observations of the photos that I took out in the field, there was a great variety. One being a question mark about did you know that, which is really cool at Chisagood, and then Monument Valley, a tribal park as well. So this is one of the only tribal parks I was able to get due to most of them being closed and the visitor center not being accessible. And then another one in Walnut Canyon. This was really nice to see that they have these plant signs out along the trail that shares also the native name as well. So just to give a little um, initial presentation about what the signs look like and also the variations in those signs. And then here are some observations that were offensive. One being discovered at Kabai Visitor Center. So just seeing that, I already initially thought, oh, I don't really feel welcomed here, or just really getting this feeling like they discovered this land before tribal communities did, and it just comes off that way. And then another one being colonization, which is another word that is not really great to use, especially in these spaces when talking about history, talking about settlers coming in and using that word colonization of Arizona, and basically not being acknowledging how impactful that is for tribal communities to see. And then another one being first European visitor at Canyon of the Ancients. Sorry if my bubble is covering that, but acknowledging that this place was named after that first visitor is just not, it doesn't seem right, especially knowing that the Pueblo may have a name for that location or may want to name it something else instead of the first European visitor. So being able to see these differences, seeing how these names can be offensive, really pushed me to do this research, to really understand how are these relationships being built between these federal agencies and tribal communities. And then there are also respectful observations, one being at Chuzagut. So both of these pictures were taken at Chuzagut. One being acknowledging the wrongs. They acknowledged that excavating was not right, and they explained that there, and they're not doing that anymore. And then another picture here shows a portion of a person that is Pueblo of Zuni, and he just shares a little bit about his relationship to that place, which is great. And I think a lot of parks and outdoor spaces will benefit from that. And then I wanted to include a slide just showing a couple more examples of Monument Valley signage, and also to emphasize that I was trying to get more tribal parks included in this research, but then I wanted to be respectful as possible due to their restrictions. So I just wanted to share a little bit about how they use their culture, how they use their histories, but also about the park histories to present Monument Valley. And that was really cool to see that. And then going into further questions that I have moving forward is, how does language in public displays impact tribal communities? How does language in public displays affect public impressions of Indigenous nations? Does these signs reflect collaborations between tribal communities and federal agencies within the Southwest region? Are there differences between the language used based on a specific federal agency? So those are some of the questions that I hope to look further into and hopefully be able to answer these soon. And then concluding, signs do demonstrate inconsistencies in how Indigenous communities are represented. Based on all those observations and signs I've shown, language has been used in past tense, which can infer that the tribal nations in that region is not currently there, or something happened to them, or they are just not there anymore, but they are still present today. Also, lack of cultural stories. And most of these signage, there isn't really that inclusion of the stories from the community, so that's really important. Also, outdated presentation style, meaning that those signs haven't been updated with current information. And then also acknowledging that large agencies such as MPS are taking a more progressive approach to language and signage compared to smaller agencies, but there can be a rise in that, especially like providing support for new signage, providing support for tribal community members to be involved in the creation of those signs. And this is really important because it supports how vital it is to consultate with tribal nations and communities. And then my next steps is creating an index formulation, which is really important to gauge how well does federal agencies and tribal nations engage with one another, especially when it comes out to recreation management. And this is just one of those sections, part of outdoor recreation management. And then doing more community outreach, sample more sites from different federal agencies. That would be really great to get that diversity. And then also interviewing with community members, managers, and professors to see their view of signage, their understanding of what that means, and also gauging how does tribal communities understand outdoor recreation. And then, yeah, thank you so much.